Welcome to the last session of the day. We will talk about the integration of JavaScript components into Uno WebAssembly applications. My name is Carl Debilly. I'm working as a senior software architect on Uno platform for Inventive and Montreal. We often have existing codebase in JavaScript, or we may simply want or need to integrate existing services that are only available on the web. For example, it could be mapping software or payment systems. Let's see together how to use Uno to do that. Let's start with the internals of Uno WebAssembly. It's basically a web browser stack. So we have the web browser, we have HTML, CSS, we have JavaScript, WebAssembly, and we have the mono-wasm runtime to run .NET code. That means that your application can access all the power of HTML5 APIs for media, for storage, for communication, for platform and devices, and obviously for the DOM HTML to render the result of the app. Let's start with a demo with the calculator, Uno calculator. That's the Windows calculator that has been recompiled on every platform, on Android, on iOS, on macOS, and also on WebAssembly. You can run it directly in your browser on that URL, calculator.platform.uno, and it's the Windows calculator that you're using since many years now. It's exactly the same with the same bugs. Anyway, that's not the goal of my demonstration. That application and other applications made using Uno WebAssembly are using the HTML DOM to render themselves. That means if you press F12 on your browser, you will get something like that. If you take, by example, the result pane of the calculator, it's basically a text block in the manage code and in the XAML. And this text block gets translated into a PHTML element in the DOM. So for every UI element in your application, there will be an HTML DOM element to render it. A text block becomes a P element, a border becomes a div element, and a shape like an ellipse becomes an SVG element. You can also choose which HTML tag will be used to render your element by using the HTML element attribute. From manage code, you can alter the DOM using a bunch of extension methods like set HTML content, set HTML attribute, set CSS class, and many others. Now, to create your custom integration, you need first to bootstrap your component. If you have CSS files, you should put them in the WASM CSS folder, and JavaScript files should go in the WASM scripts folder. And you need to create one or many controls that derive from UI element or from framework element or from panel, depending on what you want to do. And those elements, those controls, will need to create their native JavaScript counterpart, usually from the constructor. On the manage side of your application, you can also expose properties, probably dependency properties, on which you can bind to other elements in your XAML code. You can expose events, and you can even expose methods on which you can call any of the helper extension methods to change the state of the DOM or to simply execute JavaScript. Let me show you another demo. That's real code this time. I choose a datetime picker called flat picker. Let me show you first the documentation of it. I have it here. Okay. That's the flat picker. if we go on the getting started, we can see there's a way to install it directly from the CDN. We'll use that because it's quicker and it's only a 10 minutes talk. So we need to inject CSS in the application and download this script file. If you go to the documentation of UNO on the UNO website, you will see we already have the documentation to do that integration. I already start a solution in Visual Studio. From the UNO template. This one is showing hello world. That's normal because I just created the solution. So first we need to inject the CSS to load dynamically the CSS from the CDN. For that, I will create in the wasm script folder, we'll create a new file here, new item, and I choose a JavaScript file. Where it is here. It's the flat picker loader. Okay, I will take that code here and put it there. We'll just zoom a little more. Okay. And after that, that file, flat picker, need to be put as an embed resource. So an easy way to do that is just to change the CSproj file like that. Here, you can go and set it as an embed resource. Okay, so that's for the CSS. And now we need to create the control itself. We will call it flat picker view. So here in the shared project here, we'll create a new class that will be called flatpickerview.cs. After that, I have the code here. All this code, Control A, Control V. And last thing I need to do is to change the UI, because currently it's hello world. To change it for that, we'll explain to you what it is. We'll change it there. Okay, so what I did, first of all, the loader will create an element and set the CSS file for that link element, and we'll add it to the head of the HTML page hosting the application. And after that, I created control here. This control, let me switch that to wasm. That control L will create an HTML input element. We have some properties, we will deal with them later. We have the constructor here, and in the constructor, I'm calling load JavaScript. Oh, that's too fast. Okay, and in load JavaScript, we're executing a JavaScript. This JavaScript, we download the script from the CDN server, and once it's downloaded using required, we use the load object to instantiate the date time picker. So if I go back to the application here, if I press F12 and I inspect this element, I can see that's an input element that is of the type flat picker view. If I click on it, I can see that's the picker. But right now, there's no interaction between that picker and the app. So let's close it and let's fix that. First, we need to register a few custom event handler, because we will use HTML custom events to notify the manage app from the JavaScript side. So I copy that and just add those handlers here. After that, I need the implementation of the handlers, because it was just the registration here, handlers here. And finally, I will change the JavaScript to raise those handlers. if I go back here to the JavaScript, we'll just fix the indentation. Okay, we can see that's the exact same JavaScript. The only difference is the option here, and the option has three callbacks, and the callbacks are using element. That's the UI element in the DOM. It's calling dispatch event to create a custom event, and this event will be catched by this registration and dispatched to those handlers. And the first one is when a date is picked, we'll change that property there. It's a dependency property. And the same for the is picker open, is the picker is open. In the example here, we have binding to that element, to the picker element, and we'll show if the picker is open and the pick date time. So if I go back to the application here, I click here, I can see that the picker is open. And if I pick a date, I have the date here and the picker is closed now. So that's how you can integrate flat picker into an application. Also, that was an easy case. Sometimes it's more complicated than that because you may need to, or you may want to integrate your assets with the application. So you may want to download them instead of downloading it at runtime from the CDN. You may want to package them with the application. You can also need NPM to get your components and all the dependencies to integrate them and package them with your application. And now you should put your script in the wasm script folder. They will be loaded automatically when the app starts. The same for the CSS. They will be injected into the generated HTML file. You can use the content action build action if you want to use the MS Apex file syntax. And also you can use the www root folder. Let me show that to you here. You have, as an ASP.NET Core project, a www root folder where you can put stuff there, and it will be deployed with the application. You can also use TypeScript. We have few examples of TypeScript that you can use to generate code that will be compiled into the wasm script folder. That's all. Thanks. And you can follow me on Twitter, on GitHub, and I'm also available on Discord on the UWP community server.